Hi there, it's Mary Eve, and today I'm talking about the Dreamfeed. That's one of my favorite tools for nighttime. If you are offering night feedings to your kiddo, a Dreamfeed might help you get more sleep at night. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what is a Dreamfeed, what does that mean to me, how do we do a Dreamfeed, and then I'm going to share a few scenarios where it can be really helpful to use a Dreamfeed to improve and increase the sleep that you get. So let's dive in. So a dream feed is when you feed your kiddo while they're asleep. So imagine that your little one is beautifully asleep on their bed and on their mattress, totally out, quietly, silent. And then you go, you pick them up, and then you offer feeding. So basically, we decide to offer feeding, and we'll talk about why and when we want to do that. But basically, it's a feeding that's happening at night that we initiate. Now, if your kiddo wakes up and we feed her, that's not a dream feed. Now, she may fall asleep during the feed, but really the dream feed has to do with who's initiating the feeding. If we're initiating a feeding because baby is awake or crying or making sounds, that's not a dream feed in my book. A dream feed is when kiddo was totally out and we decided to do the feeding. So how do we do a dream feed? Just like you would do any feeding. So you get ready, and then if it's time to do the dream feed, you go pick her up, sit in the chair that you typically sit in to do a night feeding, and offer the feeding. You can nurse, it can be a bottle, you can put baby vertical to burp after, but basically the idea is that you pick baby up. They may wake up slightly when you pick them up because you move them, but the idea is that you offer the feeding in the dark, and that hopefully they eat and then they're out. They just go back to sleep while they're eating. They're totally out. And at the end of the feeding, you can put them back on their mattress. Now, so why we would take the risk of waking up a sleeping baby? And often like we spend so much time or it's so much effort to get our babies to sleep. And I'm asking you to wake them up. Sort of, I'm asking you to kind of try and pick them up and offer that feeding. And often it is not disruptive to their sleep at all. So now here are some scenarios where we would want to use a dream feed. This is what dream feeds are good for. The main one, the most common one, is to help align baby's sleep with ours. So as sleep develops and kiddos get a little bit older, typically the first stretch of sleep is the longest. So they fall asleep at bedtime, and they sleep their longest. And then after that, they may wake up more frequently throughout the night. So let's say babies sleep from 7 to midnight. So they sleep a 5-hour stretch from 7 to midnight. Now, if you go to bed at 7, then you also get 5 hours of sleep. But if you have things to do and you go to bed at 10, then you're only getting 2 hours of sleep before baby wakes up at midnight for their feeding. So we can use a dream feed to try to align your sleep with their 5-hour, their longest stretch of sleep. So the way we would use a dream feed to achieve that is that before you're ready to go to bed, so in this case, around 10 o'clock, you would pick up baby and do a dream feed just to top her off. And then we have a full belly at 10 o'clock. And then we can expect her to do 5 hours, but starting at 10, as opposed to her 5 hours starting at 7. So there would be a feeding before bedtime, before 7, then baby would fall asleep at 7. Around 10, you would go in and do the dream feed, then you go to bed, and then the next feeding should be around 3 a.m. because that's 5 hours after that 10 o'clock dream feed. So we're not asking baby to go longer without a feeding. We're saying, hey, I've noticed that you're able to do one 5-hour stretch during the day or during the night. And can we align that 5-hour to align with when, as a parent, I'm ready to go to sleep? So doing that dream feed before going to sleep is one really good reason to do a dream feed. And often what we see is that, we see baby be able to sleep longer. They don't wake up at midnight anymore. They sleep until 3. And then you've been able to, as a parent, get longer sleep before waking up for the next feeding. Another scenario where I use a dream feed is when we're doing some sleep coaching, we're helping baby learn to sleep more independently, but we still want to maintain, let's say, one night feeding. So let's say we want to do a feeding around midnight. We think that's the baby needs to eat once at night around that time. So what that means is that we are helping kiddo learn to fall asleep independently at bedtime and to go back to sleep independently at bedtime. But from a calorie perspective, we still feel we need to provide one feeding at night. So because kiddos can't tell the time and they can't tell if it's midnight or 3 or 11, sometimes kiddos get confused because if they wake up at 11 in this scenario, there wouldn't be a feeding. But if they wake up at midnight, there would be a feeding. But then if they woke up at midnight and then wake up at 2, well, at 2, there wouldn't be a feeding. So from a child's perspective, that can feel inconsistent, that sometimes I go back to sleep without a feeding, but every so often there is a feeding. So for some kiddos, that feels inconsistent and that can be confusing, and that can sort of make them continue to wake up to check, like, is this the time where I get to eat? No. Oh, is this the time? So one way for us to be very consistent in the way we respond when we're doing coaching is to provide that feeding as a dream feed. So somewhere around midnight, we would offer a dream feed. And then that way we know that kiddo got their calories. And then if they wake up prior to that or after that, then we can be consistent and respond the same way that we want to respond. So every time baby would wake up, we would respond the same way because we took care of the calories through a dream feed. And finally, like, here are some other ways that I've used dream feed in the past. With twins, if a twin wakes up, we feed the twin first, and then we turn around and do a dream feed for the other kiddo so that we keep them on the same nighttime feeding schedule. So with twins, we do a lot of dream feeds. Another way to use a dream feed is sometimes, like you wake up and you're like, oh, baby's going to wake up in half an hour. And it's hard for you to go back to sleep. It's you're like, oh, anytime, they're going to wake up soon for a feeding. So if you're in that scenario where you woke up, you're awake, and you're kind of waiting for baby to wake up because you expect them to wake up soon for a feeding, I would just go ahead and take care of that feeding. Just do a dream feed. You're awake. It's almost time. Let's feed baby so that you can go back to sleep as soon as possible. And then another way that I've used it is that some kiddos who don't really like the bottle may take it more easily with a dream feed. So sometimes we would like to have one bottle at night, and a way to do that is to actually do that bottle feeding through a dream feed, because kiddo is a little bit more sleepy and we can kind of sneak it in. And also I've found that sometimes I have more success with doing a bottle feed for a child who's not really into the bottle and typically would kind of resist that or not take it. So now that I've shared a few different scenarios where we can use dream feeds, how would we know if it's working? So first of all, we need to make sure that kiddo is eating during the dream feed. So if we're offering that feeding, is kiddo taking a full feed, a good feed? Are they not eating? So we want to assess, like, how many calories are being taken here, and is that typically what they get in a feeding at night? The other thing that I want to think about is what happens after the dream feed. Is it really easy to put baby back down? Once again, if a dream feed works, baby would half wake up, feed, and go back to sleep easily. If you find that your kiddo wakes up during the dream feed and then is upset, or it's hard to put baby down afterwards, then that might not be a tool for your family, because as with any tools, they don't work for everyone, right? A dream feed is a great tool that works for many kiddos, but it doesn't work for every kiddo. And so we need to try it. And those are the things we're looking for to try to assess if it's working or not. Is the kiddo eating? How easy is it to put kiddo back down after the dream feed? And then what happens? Do they sleep well? Do they sleep as long as we expected them to? Do they keep waking up? Because it's almost like if the dream feed disrupted their sleep. So those are the things that we want to kind of keep an eye on to assess whether the dream feed is helpful or not. And when you introduce a dream feed, I would probably give it like 3 nights, 3 or 4 nights. I would give it a try, three or 4 nights in a row to see what happens, right? Like to give it a few days to see if this is going to work for you or not. And sometimes it doesn't work. There are absolutely kiddos for whom that's not a good tool. So if you've tried this before, or you're going to give it a try, I would love to get your feedback in the comments. Let me know what happens.